you, Asha. I love that song. I love coming here and smiling. I mean, really, I look out there and everybody I see is a friend. Isn't that a great feeling? Isn't that one reason we come? Yes. Show of hands. Judy has 2 hands. As I said at the beginning of the service, some people have come up to me and they said, you know, I've started going around to people and I've started saying, what is it you like? What is it you want to see changed? What is it that we can do better to serve this community? And people have been saying that they want to hear themes, they want to hear series. They don't necessarily want to hear about Melanie reading a book, but they want themes. They want to hear about the same thing in a couple weeks from different aspects. So I thought about that, and I think that is a great idea. And I could not think of a better theme to start with, or a better topic to start with, than connections, than relationship and connections. Because we are people wired for community. We're people wired for relationship and for connection. And so I want to do over the next several weeks is just focus on the ways we connect to ourselves, to spirit, to community, to the earth, to Mother Earth, where we're all so dependent. Christian mystic Thomas Merton wrote that love is our true destiny. We do not find the meaning of life by ourselves alone. We find it with another. There are some great quotes out there on connection. I'm going to try to give you some of them today. But it's our nature to join out, to reach out, to be together. One of the worst experiences you can give to anybody, and they're finding this in research, is to put them in isolation, is to deprive them of connection, of contact with others. People go crazy. They just have a physical need to be in connection and in community with others. But having said that, one of the things that happens to us is we are scared. This is speaking for me and for maybe others in the room. We hesitate. We hold back. We don't show our true face. We long to be seen. We long to be heard. We long to be known. But it is so difficult, even in this age of constant communication. I can sit and tweet, and I can Facebook, and I can do all sorts of things. But how scary is it sometimes just to be known? I did an exercise last year in a seminar, and I'd like to tell you about it. The seminar leader put us into pairs, and it was a seminar on connection, on being seen, and on being in true communication. And she put us into pairs, and so we would look at each other's eyes. Have you ever tried doing that? Being a foot away from a total stranger and looking in their eyes? That's not easy, because we do it briefly. We don't do it continually. So anyway, we're looking at each other's eyes, and one of the partners says, I am here to be seen. And the other partner, a few seconds later, looks back and says, and I see you. Think about that. I am here to be seen, and I see you. I thought this was going to be a piece of cake. I was in tears by my third person. Seriously. And I didn't know any of these people. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. But I was so moved by this experience, because I would say, I am here to be seen and I see you. It's like you're standing there with no clothes on. It was one of the most moving things I've ever done. And it made me wonder how often we are really brave enough to have that connection with other people, to have that true, profound connection. I believe that the desire to connect, the ability to be in relationship, is one of the fundamental challenges of our spiritual journeys. Do you all agree? Yeah, it really is. It's one of the hardest things to do and one of the most necessary things to do. In researching this talk, I saw an article that said one definition of spirituality is the art of making connections. Think about that. A definition of spirituality itself is the art of making connections with ourselves, with God, with each other, with our community. Now, we know that separateness in New Thought is an illusion. It's an illusion made easier by the physical world we inhabit. We are born separately. We look separate. I don't look like any of you folks. We navigate the world separately. But we know that it is just not true. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, our ancient experience confirms at every point that everything is linked together. Everything is inseparable. One of my favorite authors is Mark Nepo. Who knows Mark Nepo? Book of Awareness. If you don't know it, I would recommend it. Judy, yeah, get that book. Get that book. It is a wonderful book. It has got wonderful quotes. It's got wonderful insights. Mark Nepo is a mystic who was just going along living his life, and then he got cancer. And it was transformational. I can't even think of a better way to say it. It gave him such profound insight on the nature of awareness, the joy of living, the necessity to be in the moment. And the gift of his cancer was this wonderful book called The Book of Awakening. And I'm going to read something from it to you. I don't usually read a lot of stuff, but I'm going to read this because it applies to what I'm talking about. It's an excerpt that he wrote called The Stones at Chimeo. On the way to Chimeo, a woman saw two Spanish farmers repositioning stones in a riverbed to redirect the flow, and she felt compelled to help. She had the feeling that this had been done for centuries, their mothers and fathers, their grandmothers and grandfathers, each in their own time and way, picking up the same stones pushed about by storm or drought and putting them back so the water can continue. It seems that this is the never-ending work of relationship, each of us in our own time and way, moving the stones between us, repositioning the heavy things that get in the way, so the life of feeling can continue. The weather of simply living jams things up, and we, like every generation before us, must roll up our pants and sleeves, step into the river, and unclog the flow. Of course, we need to ask, what are the stones pushed about between us? What are the heavy things that keep getting in the way? No doubt they are infinite and particular, but often they are made of habits, of not seeing, not hearing, not feeling, not being present, not risking the truth, not risking the heart's need to live out in the open. That we close off, jam up, spill over, and dry up are all part of being human in the gravity of time. That we feel compelled to stop and help even strangers move the heavy thing out of the way is an impulse known as love. That we stop and help even strangers is an impulse known as love. Our physical natures, the obstacles we put between ourselves, create such a strong perception of separateness. One of the things that we need to do, one of the things we do here at One World, is we do the work to realize that the connections are what are real. The separation is what is illusory. We manufacture it to keep ourselves safe, to keep ourselves insulated, to keep our hearts from breaking wide open. But the work we do is so necessary to achieve the connection, which is the nature, the truth of our essence. We do this by consciously tracing the links, connecting us with others, and we can start anywhere. We can start connecting the links between ourselves and family, between ourselves and friends, between people at work, between ourselves and the earth. One of the book we're reading in Sunday school with Reverend Annette is, as I've said before, Essential Spirituality. And one of the exercises is just to spend an hour and tell yourself that whoever you meet is just holy. And how would your relationship with that person change if you were to regard them as holy? What a revolutionary thought. So, what are some of the obstacles that Mark Nepo in his little excerpt defines? He calls them knots. The first is not seeing. Now, how often do we meet people or meet occurrences and events and we do not see? How often do we not see the truth that is in front of us? I know you all have done a little exercise where you ask yourself, where you think, isn't it true that we arrive at conclusions by gathering facts? Because that's how we like to think. Asha's shaking her head. We don't. We create conclusions, we have beliefs, and then we go around gathering facts that support them. That's why you can have three people that see the same event and they saw three different things, is because they went in with three different conclusions. But how often do we do that with each other? When we are looking at somebody, having a discussion with somebody, are we seeing them? Are we looking and seeing and telling the truth of them? Or are we having a discussion with who they've been? Are we having a discussion with our misperceptions, our fears, our history? When we get in discussions and we say, you always do this, or you never do that, we're not seeing that person. We're seeing our history of that person through our own perceptions of that history. We're having a discussion with our own resentments, our own unresolved conflicts. This work is an invitation to see the person in front of you, to truly see that person's desires, their willingness, their love, whatever is being presented, instead of your perceptions or your unaddressed resentments over your history with that person. That is the work that is so important to do. Being present, being conscious, being aware. He next identifies the obstacle of not hearing. That is the art of listening. That is the art of being present. One of the authors I'm reading now is Martin Buber, whose foundational work, I and Thou, I think I may have talked about it in previous talks, but Martin Buber was a mystic who spent his life developing the notion that God is found in deep dialogue. He believed that God is found in the relationships between human souls and hearts, created by meaningful and present and profound dialogue. As he wrote, all real living is meeting. His history is an interesting one. Very educated, born in Vienna, he spent the early parts of his adult life believing that the road to God was through religious ecstasy, through revelatory moments, through magical inspiration in moments of religious fervor. Then in 1914, he experienced what he called a conversion. He had spent the morning on that day in religious ecstasy, meditating, getting insights, totally devoid and totally separate from human life. And then a young man came to see him. And the young man was unknown to him, but unknown to Buber, the young man was having a profound spiritual crisis. And he needed to talk to him. He needed somebody to immediately and profoundly listen to him. And Martin Buber did not, because he was still so taken up with his transcendental experiences of the morning. He was polite. He listened to the guy. He spoke with him. He answered his questions. But the young man went away desolated because he had not been heard. And Buber later found out that he had been killed in World War I on the front lines and did not act to save his own life because he died out of, quote, a despair which did not oppose his own death. And Martin Buber's foundational work, which is a foundational work for Christian mystics even today, was born from that experience. He immediately abandoned the notion that connection with God is found in religious ecstasy. He abandoned the life of religious ecstasy, or as he wrote it, it has given me up. He wrote, quote, I possess nothing but the everyday out of which I am never taken. He totally flipped the paradigm. He realized that God is right here, right now, in the common everyday relationships between all of us. It's not in some sort of fervor, in some ecstasy, whereas you then step out of it and life continues. It's not. It's in the everyday doings between all of us. Speaking, doing the dishes, watching, anything. The relationships, the connection between our hearts and our minds. Communication and dialogue and the fact that we are present for each other is where we experience God. In his title, I and Thou, the Thou is not an other. The Thou is the space between two hearts which are in communion. God is found in the energy between me and you. I and Thou. That is where we experience God. That is where God animates us. Mark Nepo also applies the notion of not feeling. Not feeling arises from our lack of connection. It arises from our not seeing, our not hearing, our multitasking, our being too busy. How many of us do that? See, the phone is the greatest offender. How many of us, when we're on the phone with somebody else, are cruising Facebook? Or we're answering email? Hello? I do. We all do. How many of us, even when somebody's in front of us, we're doing something else? I have made a personal commitment, because I'm told I'm very bad about this. My family tells me I'm very bad about this. Is that when I am talking to somebody, I'm going to put the stupid phone down. I'm not going to check my text. I'm going to be there. And if I am not doing that with any of you, please just smack me. You will help me in my personal commitment. But it is the only way we can be present and loving and there for each other. Love and compassion arise from our willingness to see each other, to hear each other, and to be present with each other. Rachel Naomi Reman writes, when we know ourselves to be connected to all others, acting compassionately is simply the natural thing to do. Okay, now think about that, because that's an important point. When we know we are connected, acting compassionately is the natural thing to do. So what does that say to me? It means I don't have to try. It means that when I take that step to listen, to see, to hear, it's there already. In Sunday school class, Reverend Annette is teaching us that in order to grow spiritually, she equates it to a garden and a gardener. The gardener does not make the plants grow. The gardener does not stand there and say, grow, and boom, here we have it. No, the gardener creates the conditions to make it possible for the miracle of growth to occur. The sunlight, the plant food, the moisture, whatever. The gardener is not creating the miracle. The gardener is creating the conditions for the miracle of life to happen. The same is true with developing connection and compassion. I can sit on my sofa all day long and say, Melanie, you really need to be more compassionate. You need to go out there and develop some connection. It won't work unless I get up, go out my door, hold somebody's hand, help somebody who's suffering, walk with them through joy, through darkness. That is where connection and compassion awaken, in the steps that we take. The action creates the environment. It is our own essential divine nature out of which the miracle happens. I don't have to try. It's all in here. I just take the steps and it will happen, and I have to trust that, and so do you. It's by working to create connection with others, community with others, that our own joy awakens. I cannot think of a better win-win than that. And I don't know that anybody else can. There is not one. Albert Camus wrote, when you have once seen the glow of happiness on the face of a beloved person, you know that a man can have no vocation but to awaken that light on the faces surrounding him. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. Listen to that again. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. An invincible summer. Nothing can beat it. In the midst of joy, of fear, of pain, of anything, of loss, he learned that by serving others, he found that eternal light, that eternal energy, that eternal invincible summer that is always there for him to call upon and for him to share with others. And we all have that. Don't we know that, going through hard times, going through dark times? If we reconnect with that essence inside, The light is still there. It is always still there. And it is made brighter by our going out and attempting to share it with others. So, my goal in the next few weeks is to explore the many ways we can remain in relationship and in connection with ourselves, spirit, community, our earth. So let us explore together how we move the boulders together to keep these streams flowing. Let's take these thoughts and